we're live. So, welcome to another episode of Women Lifting Women, a podcast dedicated for female voices in leadership and tech. And today, I'm really excited to host a special episode where I have two guests. Jacki is returning, and she's joined by Beatka, her mentee. And I will let both of them introduce themselves, and we can get started.
Well, I'll start then. My name is Jacki Vause, and for those of you who've listened to Women Lifting Women podcast, I've been on the podcast before. My job is I'm the CEO of Dimoso, which is a PR and marketing agency that specializes in the games industry and in all the tech and entertainment that supports that industry. So it's just a 360 holistic support of the games industry. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Beatka.
Thank you, Jacki. So, hi, everyone. My name is Beatka, and I'm a founder and CEO of Chaos Cookie. It's a cozy game studio with a very strong focus on the visual part and how the games make you feel. So I founded the studio almost 2 years ago, but it was always just a side project for me, and it's been my full-time venture for around almost 3 months now. Yeah, time flies. And I've met Jacki during a Game Changer program organized by Games London last year. We first met around September, so it's been a few intensive months, and she's been really helpful.
Congratulations, one. And there's not still to today, there's not that many women in gaming. So it's fascinating to see female-led gaming studios. There's definitely not enough of them. And considering that women play more games than men, at least in mobile. And for some reason, women don't make games, which is definitely concerning. To get started and to warm us up, my favorite question of all time, thinking of the positive side of being a woman and asking what is the advantage of being a woman in your role and industry? And Jacki, I believe I already asked you that, but you can still answer it again.
Well, I knew you were going to ask this question, Emma, because it's a great question. And I think I had a different answer last time, but my answer this time is that, do you know what's great about being a woman now in the industry is that we actually have programs like this, where light is starting to be shone on the women in the industry, and we have an ability through programs like your podcast to continue that light and continue pushing things forward. And that's a really great thing about being a woman in this industry, is that we can actually get together and do things like this. So I'm not going to zero in on all of our womanly abilities this time, but I think it's a really, really great thing that we've got that in our industry now.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Jacki, but also on the more ability side, obviously, I don't know what it's like not to be a woman, but having worked with a lot of women, maybe not necessarily in games, but a lot in tech, I do see that we tend to juggle many more things at the same time, and it makes us actually really good at context switching and managing different responsibilities, because we play so many roles in our lives, and just I think that also shows up in our work, that we very rarely focus on just one thing, which is a very different approach to work and life in general. And I think it's really great that we have that. Like everyone can just do whatever they feel like doing, and that women have this different focus.
I mean, I definitely have to agree, considering the amount of tabs I have open. Slightly staggering. I think I probably have some sort of a record. I should really, test a Guinness Book of Record to see how many how many tabs people have open on average, or what's the most amount of tabs people work with, and probably I'm right up there.
I think as a woman, we have mental tabs open all the time. I think as a woman, we manage to have those lists. I call it a list per everybody and per everything. So I've got a list for the dog. I've got a list for the son. I've got a list for the husband. I've got a list for every single body that works at Dimoso. So it's and you're managing those lists constantly.
I definitely agree, both virtually, physically, on all of the layers and all of the levels. And as someone we recently launched a mentorship program. It was the beginning of this year. But I would love to hear what has been your favorite part about mentorship as both a mentor and a mentee.
Okay, I can go first this time. I have an engineering background, so that means that the engineering part of running a gaming studio, that's fairly straightforward. Well, fairly straightforward. It's never that easy, but I know this part of the business and I know how this works. But that also means that I don't know much. Well, at least I didn't know much about everything else that goes into running a business. And Jacki has so much experience in the industry, and she was able to help me with so many things that I would just come to her with a problem. It's like, hey, like, what is this thing? I've never had that before. And she would just kind of like put me on the path and like, okay, so this is that thing and this is what you do with it. And then I could just like go on my way. And she just saved me like months of work and research by just saying a few sentences. And yeah, I think it was actually a really great mentorship from the start. And she just helped me really skyrocket the whole studio thing. Like it's really been amazing to just work with her.
That's so good to hear. You know, Emma, I've learned so much from Beatka as well. Do you know what I've mostly learned is that what you imagine you can make happen, that we have with all the right intention and all the right focus and the positivity that Beatka brings to what she's doing with her. I mean, the bravery as well to give up her full-time job and just say, right, I'm going to dedicate everything I can to setting up a studio on my own, for me is mind-blowing. It's so brave and deserves quite rightly support. But what she's taught me is that you can really just get out there, do what you want and make it happen for you. And you hear that happen. You hear those voices, don't you? You hear people saying that. But Beatka, to me, is actual physical living proof of that. And what she's achieved in these last few months is honestly phenomenal. I couldn't do it. I mean, it's great that I can sit back and say, hey, you know, you could try this, you could try that, but it's all her own work.
I mean, I think that's part of the power of mentorship, right? Is just not just, yes, saving, of course, teaching someone from your experience but kind of that exchange of experience and exchange, even in just the positivity and outlook in life. I think it's just feeling the feeling of being uplifted, even through some difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would have been your most memorable lessons from Jacki, Beatka? Like, what do you think? One thing that stuck to your mind?
Actually, there are two, and they are quite related. So the first one, that was hilarious to me, like looking back, because 5 minutes into our first meeting, Jacki just flat out said, like, "You're too humble," and I was like, "What? We've barely just met. How do you know this?" But it really got me thinking that, well, if she can see it after 5 minutes, after like never having seen me before, maybe there is something to it. So I started working on that, and then I realized that my problem is not maybe being humble on its own, but just having the right frame of reference and the framework to work with, because you cannot just be humble on your own. You're humble in comparison to someone else, right? So I think my frame of reference was a little bit too harsh initially, and then I started working on this, and then a few months later I came back to her and I'm like, what is my frame of reference? Like who do I compare myself to? And then she just told me, like, nobody. Like, you just make up your own rules. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want. And that was really powerful. And I think it came at the right time when I was ready to receive this. And she just said, like, you can do whatever you want. And I'm just doing that now. And it's really cool.
That's fantastic. And there is a risk of being too humble. We glorify like being humble, especially around women. But I mean, I also say that to my own partner. Like, yes, it's beautiful that you're so humble, but like you also need to advocate for yourself, and you can blame other people for not seeing your light if you're not willing. Like, if you don't let yourself shine, you have to allow that. And you know what? Allow yourself to say, yes, I'm great. Like, just own it. It's okay. It's not something bad. It's a really positive and beautiful thing. Which is a journey we're working on in our own home. But I think women struggle with it even more because of how much society have told us that we do need to be humble.
Sure.
and how it was emphasized. And I see it in content. I see it. It's always like in films, or that she doesn't know that she's pretty, and like, and if she knows she's pretty, she's not like, she's mean about, like, all of this over glorification of women not knowing their own value. Like, no, I don't like that. And that's beautiful in its own right. Thank you very much.
And do you know what? I think we believe quite a lot of that propaganda, that sort of, you know, the humble Cinderella working quietly, and that suddenly she gets discovered by the prince. I'm sorry, but that just doesn't happen.
Well, it kind of happened to me, really.
I mean, the thing is, it's either random, but you create your own opportunities. And I think that's
true.
industrious Cinderella, like when she's a hustler and she, you know what, find the godmother, like get the dress, find her, like hustle a ticket into that ball, and you create an opportunity. That's who you should glorify, because she whacked.
That's true. Yeah, creating opportunities, and also recognizing when an opportunity is knocking at your door and then just taking it.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that more women are learning to do, but it's a journey. So I'm not saying that men don't have this challenge, because they do. Again, I have that in my own household. But it's something which I have seen more commonly happen in women. And it's definitely something that I also need to work on. Advocating for myself, being proud of myself, like learning to say, no, I'm great. It's okay. It's okay that I can say it. So that's wonderful to hear. And on the flip side, what have you found to be the most challenging part about the mentorship?
You want to go first? Okay, I can go. So I think for me, it was actually scheduling the time, because things are moving really quickly in this industry, and especially for me as a founder of a young studio, and also Jacki just doing always a million things, and actually just finding the time and then just sticking to the time, that was challenging. And also, like, once we do find the time, by the time we actually do meet, there's so many things that change already that it's never enough.
What about yourself, Jacki?
Well, for me, I is resisting the urge to fix it. For Beatka, resisting the urge to, and to a certain extent, I do kind of say, okay, I'm in PR, I can do the press launch for you, and I kind of like do grab things and take them, but I try not to, and I just try to. There are sometimes I just really wanted to do things, and I've just buttoned it, because I know that she's more than capable of doing them, not only as well as me, but better than me. And it's that kind of like, you know, kind of like, I am there to guide you, I'm not there to do it for you. And I have that problem in my own life with my son. You know, I'm always trying to do things for him and stopping myself. My husband's always telling me, let him run fast, fall over. I don't want you to fall. So I think for me, it's that kind of like, I'm just gonna hold back.
I mean, I think that's really fair, because in the end of the day, I don't know, give a man a fish, he'll like be full once. So teach a man to fish, he will be like full for the rest of his life. I think that's exactly the situation. Often I also fall into that trap, and like, I'm going to do it for you, even with my team or anything else, like, let me fix it or let me help you. But constantly pulling myself back and like, you know what, how about you struggle with it? We do it together. You struggle with it again until you know how to do it all by your own. And I'm not doing your homework for you, mostly because I want you to learn how to do it yourself, not because I'm lazy and don't want to do it. But it's hard. It's not easy.
But the thing is, I never have that fear with Beatka that things aren't going to get done. I know they're going to get done. I know she's going to do it. She's absolutely phenomenal. Her work rate is off the scale. And whenever I talk about Beatka behind her back, I always just say she's the perfect mentee. And I've mentored lots and lots and lots of people. But this is the first time I've mentored somebody who's set up this is their sort of at scratch, setting up their first business. And I remember what it was like for me, setting up my first business. And what Beatka just said about the frame of reference is that I didn't have a frame of reference when I first did it. And I felt that my first attempt at setting up a business was so successful because I didn't have any preconceptions of what other people do what's right and what's wrong. And honestly, it was my second business that I got wrong, because I had created my own frame of reference. I created my own preconceptions, and I hadn't remembered all of that pioneering entrepreneurial spirit that just left me with a, I don't care, I'm just going to knock on that door and go to one of the most famous men in tech and make him listen to me. That's all gone by that stage, because I had the preconceptions, which is why I keep saying to Beatka, you make your own rules.
I think that there's a balancing act where you need to learn from lessons, and you need to learn, even for like working with Jacki saved you a few months of like research or waste of time, because you've learned from her experience. I think there's something really valuable in learning from other people and what they struggle with, and kind of like, and there's like getting a shortcut into like kind of a cheat code into like creating that. Versus that belief that you can't. I think when I first, so I recently started producing films, and the thing is, what I get right probably most of the time is I have no fear, meaning I am not scared to approach really famous anyone and say, yes, we're going to do it. And it's been really effective, because if you believe in it, if you have the faith, if you have the gumption to go for it, and you will succeed. If you don't, you will fail before you even start. I think that's kind of like what you're doing right now is beautiful and scary, and that's the wonderful part of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. And another question I find really interesting for me is, what are the challenges you had to face, and what did they teach you, and how we learn from struggle?
Yeah, I've actually faced so many different challenges on so many different levels, but I think one of the biggest one for sure was to finding the courage to actually leave my job, because it was nice. Like, I had a good job. I was working at Google in a really cool team, and yeah, it was hard for me to make the decision to leave. So I realized I'm actually not that brave. So I had to de-risk it as much as I could. So I made myself a list of backup plans. I kind of planned for every possibility that could happen, just so that I feel safe in this decision. And it took a long time, and I had to like prepare myself for this, like financially and mentally, and I just kind of have so many backup plans. And that taught me that once I was already on the other side, I realized it's not actually that bad. But I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't prepare myself that much. And I think that this kind of taught me a lot about that preparing yourself is the necessary step. But as you do that more often, you don't actually have to prepare that much, because you learn that the risks are not that bad, and you're not just going to drop the day you leave your job, which I genuinely thought would happen. And then that kind of brings me to the other side, which is that 2 years ago, I've been diagnosed with endometriosis. And to be honest, having that disease compared to leaving my job and starting my own company is much, much worse. And that taught me that I should put everything else into perspective, because yeah, you can have a job or run a studio or do whatever you want, but you can only do this if you're healthy. And if you're in pain and you cannot really do much physically, or not even, you can't really even think, because it's so much pain, that everything else doesn't really matter. So that kind of taught me that the first thing that comes always is me and my health. And I think everyone should think that way. And then if you cannot deliver on a project because you're just not feeling well, then that's it. You're just not doing it. You just do it another time. But having to flip that script where I come first and then the work will wait, that was quite a challenge on its own as well, because I'm, I think, naturally quite driven. So it was a tough lesson to learn, but at the same time, I didn't have a choice. So it made it a bit easier.
I still need to learn it. I'm still working through that process. So I think it's a journey, for some reason, especially for women again. It's a journey of, it's also like why women always are sick longer than men, because women will continue dealing with everything, and men will just be in bed for like 3 days and then they're fine. And then we will just carry on and then we'll be sick for months to come.
Yeah, and I still get it wrong sometimes, but I know that if I do, the price to pay in how I feel is a lot. So sometimes when I do have a deadline, I will push myself, but then I'm like, okay, I'm pushing this week, but the next week I'm definitely taking off, and then I'm just gonna like do nothing. But yeah, it's a journey, like you said, and I think you will get it wrong every now and again, but eventually you'll just get better at it, and that's sort of how things are supposed to be, right?
I mean, it's always like hard to sometimes tell, and I think that it's us, the newer generation, like learned a bit better to prioritize themselves. I think it's your part, like, think that it's a mental state that we need to overcome, and that statement of like works come first. We can be really hard workers without compromising ourselves and compromising our health, because health is always first. It's what I tell the team and try to live by. But I mean, I try is the operative word. What about you, Jackie? Do you have any challenges? What they taught you?
I think Beatka absolutely just outlined my major challenge, which is time. You know, and we've talked about this before, and guilt. You know, that guilt of not spending enough time on certain things, and it doesn't matter whether it's personal stuff, your health. It's a massive issue for me. It's another challenge as well. You know, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia many years ago, so I really understand the challenge of living with pain, and I don't talk about it at all. In fact, this is the first time I've actually revealed it publicly. But yeah, you know, the health side of things is a real challenge to live with, and you do need to prioritize yourself. And we all know what that looks like, and that is a bit of a challenge. But I think the other thing is just trying to think about all the things that I can do to help with whatever challenges other people have as well. And I'm a big believer in connecting people, and you know, so that for me it's time, and I want to spend all that time. I want to connect Beatka with everybody that can really help her, and time to check back and see if those things have worked for her. But yeah, time, biggest challenge.
I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge of humankind. Time and the journey we have with it, and what does it mean for us. I do understand the whole. So for me, obviously, I am public about, for example, mental health and anxiety. I bring my dog, my service dog, with me almost everywhere, and I do it quite purposefully because it is important for me to speak about it. I'm very appreciative of both of you talking about your own situations and your own journey, because I do think we need to normalize different things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Different situations, different conditions, different challenges.
And I think if we don't do this, then we just paint a bit of a skewed picture, that we make it sound like it's easier than it really is. But I'm sure it's the case for Jacki, but I know that it is the case for me, that there are days where I cannot operate at 100%. And I think if there is someone that can just listen to this podcast and realize that actually it's okay if you don't, because you need to put yourself first, then that's already a win, right? Like, because we show people, yeah, you can get to where we are and do what we do, even if sometimes you just need a day off.
Exactly. So it's exactly what also important for me, regardless of the reason why you're struggling, regardless if it's a physical or mental, regardless of what's happening. You can be quite like advanced in your career. You don't have to hold yourself back. It's not the end of, like, it doesn't mean that you don't have a career. It doesn't mean that you're not successful. You can be both. And it's okay that you're struggling, and it's a journey. Which is why I, for example, bring Aurora and just be on stage and then have Aurora there, and speak about something completely different, but also about, like, it took me a while to feel comfortable enough to push, like, no, I'm going to travel with my service dog, and yes, the company will accept it, because previous companies I had to kind of, like, as he said, diminish it. Like, no, it's fine. It's not really a big deal. I don't need to bring her, because they wouldn't allow it, and it wasn't really cognizant in public mind. And even still, if I go to any place, there's an argument, there's this discussion. I need to justify myself.
Do you still get that?
Yes.
Do you still get that problem?
Yes, regularly, endlessly. And it's a struggle to explain and debate, and like also justify, what does it mean that you use a service dog? And like, sometimes it makes you, it's not always the most comfortable thing to do. So it's a bit of a journey, and you get used to speaking up for yourself, which is hard, but very useful. For me, it was easier because I thought of all the other people who could not speak for themselves, and therefore I had to use my voice in order to normalize it. I don't know if for you, you feel the same.
For sure, yeah.
I think Beatka has given me a little bit of courage to actually talk about it too, you know, and you learn. I mean, every day, we've talked about this before, Emma, you know, every day you learn something new, and you learn something new about yourself. I didn't realize, because I've always known Emma with Aurora. I've never sort of seen her in any other way. So I've never kind of thought about the fact that you might have to still explain to people why you've got Aurora with you. For me, it's just every time I see Emma at an event, is Emma and Aurora. It's just the way things are. So you know, this podcast is already revealing things that I didn't know about.
I feel like if you go to, so like, it's a journey. Sometimes people have to endure it with me, but like, even like booking for company events and booking for restaurants with clients, and I have to verify, and we sometimes got kicked out, and then we had to like change the plan, and I was like, it's illegal, and they don't care. So all of that, it's an interesting, let's call it interesting process. And it's also because of different backgrounds of different people. They have like, there's like, you sometimes have to like face some of other people conceptions and ethnical or religious beliefs, and while you don't want to dismiss that, like if they infringe on your rights, who has the right? It becomes quite complex. Let's put it this way: it becomes quite complex and dealing with that. And finally, and also kind of a favorite question of mine, because I think it's important to think about. But if there was one tip that you had to kind of wish you knew earlier, or you thought about earlier, and for you, Beatka, it might be that it's not the end of the world to leave your job, and it's like quite safe. But what are the one tip you think you wish you knew earlier?
I would think that it's to not be very harsh, not be too harsh on yourself, because everybody's winging it. And it, in the beginning of your career, especially when you start something new, you think that, oh, everyone has everything together and I'm just kind of like struggling here. But the reality is everyone is at every stage of life, and everyone is just trying to do their best and hoping that it will work out. And I think if you just in the middle of your own struggles, it's hard to see that everyone else is doing the same. So yeah, just don't be that harsh on yourself because of this.
I love it. Jacki, any thoughts?
Definitely. Well, I alluded a bit earlier on in the podcast to my second company, which didn't work. And it's something I learned from that, which was ask for help. And I think that's actually where this whole relationship started with me and Beatka. She went to Game Changers, she asked for help, she got help. And I have also, with Beatka, asked for other people, and not just always women. Other men in this industry have been incredibly supportive of Beatka when I've introduced her to them. And there are some really significant men like Peter Koyman from Half Moon Gaming and Kristen Rivers. And I'm sure Beatka can mention other people, Kristen's from Adimo, other people that I've literally just introduced Beatka to, and they've run with it and they've carried her too and have been incredibly supportive of her. So my big tip is ask for help and keep asking, even if you don't get the help the first time. We're lucky in our industry, to be honest. Our industry is very helpful and collaborative.
That's for sure.
And it's a different type of industry. So I do know that women in other industries might actually come up against a bit of a barrier when they ask for help. My only tip is keep asking. And I wish I'd done it in my second company, because if I had, I think I wouldn't be where I am today. Well, I wouldn't have lost that company, put it that way.
I mean, it taught you, I think, a valuable lesson. So I never believe in like learn from the past, don't regret it. That's because you learned, and it brought you to today, it brought you to Dimoso, it brought you to where you needed to be, and being able to learn that lesson, which I think is really powerful. And I sometimes refer to my, like, if you want one tip about like asking for help, or how powerful is it? And one, asking for help is the most well-known way to build trust within your relationship. Actually, not offering help, but asking for help, because then you're in a more vulnerable position. So if you want to actually build trust in a relationship, ask for help, don't offer it. And then second, the one email I get to respond to, like 99% of the time, probably I get to respond to is small favor or help. It's always a title. If I write I need help from someone, it's the one email I get the highest response to. Just saying, higher than offering free things. And that's a thing. I don't know, something to bear in mind. When you're when you're sending emails and or you're thinking of how is that all right, I think it's more than all right.
Yeah, but I also think if you take a leaf from my book and think about the worst case scenario, like what's the worst thing that can happen if you ask for help? They'll just say like, oh, sorry, I can't really help you with that. But maybe they'll connect you with someone who can. So there is really, you're not really risking anything by asking for help.
I like it. Always a risk assessment kind of approach, which is really valid. Any last thoughts? Anything to add?
Well, yeah, there is a last thought, because we've got International Women's Day coming up.
We do.
And this is how this whole podcast came about, was, the talk about not just doing something for the day, not just doing something for one moment in time, but continuing and being consistent. And my last thought is to you, Emma. Thank you very much for doing this podcast and doing it for the last year, and maintaining it and creating such an amazing group of people that you've created, who are now Emma is too humble too, and she hides her light under her bushel, but she's actually created another mentor program out of this podcast. And we're starting to work, the people who've been on the podcast are starting to work with more mentees. And so, that's my last thought, is thank you very much, Emma, for this last year, because it's been incredibly productive.
Thank you so much for saying it. I don't know if too humble, but I'll take it. And this podcast will be released. I'm actually looking and will be viewed during the International Women's Day this year, where we will relaunch our platform for a bigger and better year. So we're really excited to be 1 year into the program, and I'm joined by amazing. So I'm very, very fortunate to have both support from Number 8 and from Audio to lift this project up. So I'm definitely not in it alone. I'm just I just do the interviews, but it's been an amazing journey for me, and I think I've been the most fortunate in learning so much from so many incredible women that have joined. But you know what? I did say advocate for yourself, so good job as well.
Yeah, great job, Emma.
Thank you. I mean, I did say we should, so I will practice what I preach.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's going to be a bit sad. But thank you both so much for your time, Jacki and Beatka, for joining me today for another episode of Women Lifting Women, a special edition, showing the power of mentorship. If for the full episode, please go to www.womenliftingwomen.io. The new platform launched probably today. And for more amazing content, it will be available on the platform.